This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Kevin Tucker and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic!
What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is December 5th, 2024. Jonathan Osborne back in the saddle here, joined by my co-host, Kevin Tucker. Kevin, I missed nipples while I was gone. I can't believe it.
Yeah, that's always a tough thing to miss. But yeah, it was nice to have Luke hang out with us.
Yeah, it was.
On Monday. But yeah, good to have you back. Welcome back. Glad to get to talk some Magic basketball with you again, like always.
Appreciate that. Yeah, Luke was fired up. You know, his first pod in 5 months during a 6-game win streak. I know everybody was, happy to hear from him. You know, we'll get him back soon enough. Another time or another couple of times throughout the course of the season here. But yeah, appreciate Luke stepping in. Good to hear his voice. It was just like the good old days. You know, when I be out of town and the kids are running the show while dad's gone, so that's, they would always kind of behind the scenes stuff. Kevin and Luke would always argue about who gets to be the mom and who gets to be the dad.
Oh, really? We did? Oh.
Well, I mean, it wasn't so much arguing, but the question would be asked, usually by Luke,
right?
Of who's the mom, who's the dad.
Yeah. But hey, before we get into Magic basketball, Jonathan, there's something that we have not discussed publicly.
Here we go.
Since its release, and I feel like a moral obligation that we have to do this. And the people that are here for Magic Talk are going to roll their eyes, and that's fine. But I'm an evangelist for this. Jonathan and I have both seen Wicked since its release, and it is Jonathan, what do you think about Wicked, Jonathan?
What do I think about Wicked? I think we're about to lose some listeners for good right now. No, I'm totally
good.
Kidding.
Oh, that's a good one. There you go.
Oh, see, that's the thing. I don't know anything about the second part of Wicked just yet.
That's a great song. It's tearjerker.
Anyways, for those that don't know, and I don't tell a lot of people this, and I'm about to tell a couple of thousand, arguably here, but I am a big musical guy, right? Like I was big into the High School Musical movies that came out as a kid, and obviously, like I saw The Wizard of Oz and I saw Grease as a kid. But like High School Musical was like the first time that I was really into any musicals, and then since then, obviously, everybody loves Hamilton, and I really enjoyed The Greatest Showman. So yeah, I saw the Wicked trailer like a year ago when the first one came out, and I said that's going to be terrible. I had never seen the Broadway show, had never seen the play. But then all of a sudden, like people that I respect their film opinions, either on TikTok or my personal life, like you, I kept hearing like, oh man, it's really good. And I was like, well, I like musicals and not a big Ariana Grande fan, right? Like I'm not into her music. I'm not that it's bad or anything. It's just not my thing. So I was really apprehensive going into that. And last Tuesday, I went by myself. My wife was getting all the preliminary stuff done for Thanksgiving. We always host Thanksgiving at our house. And she's like, I don't feel like going and seeing a 3-hour movie tonight. It's like, then I'm going to go by myself. And I was absolutely blown away. Just fantastic. Like people talk about like the color grading in the film. If there's one criticism I would have is that it did feel like a little dead for what it could have been, but everything else, like the costumes, the choreography, the acting, the singing, like all of the songs were great. It was really, really good. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I agree. We could do a whole episode on Wicked, but yeah, I'm a huge Wicked fan, a huge just musicals fan. I was in a lot of them. I was a borderline theater kid, growing up, and so I was in several shows.
That checks out 100%.
I know it does. I know it does. I deserve it.
That is the least shocking thing that we're gonna talk about on this.
But yeah, I mean, I've seen the actual show a couple times, and yeah, the movie was just, I was worried about it. Yeah. But man, it was so good. I'm already ready for part 2. I'm ready for November.
And I was really impressed by Ariana Grande. Like I was afraid that it was going to be too much Ariana Grande, like coming through the character, and I didn't get any of that. I thought she was awesome. Obviously, Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba is just like
crazy,
like transcendent. Like this is no diss to like Kristen Chenoweth or to Idina Menzel, who played those characters in the original Broadway production. But when I listened to the film soundtrack and I went back and I was like this is up a level from the additional. I don't want to hurt anybody's
It's
feelings,
also
but
up
to
22 years, so
correct,
the technology is a little different. But yes,
you're right. You're right.
It's a totally different sport.
It definitely is. But it was just awesome. Even if you're not super into that kind of thing, I enjoy show music, right? Like the Disney. Like I was listening to it in the car with my girls, and Avery goes, "I don't know what this is, but I know it's Disney." I'm like, no, it's actually not Disney, but it sounds like that because all the music from the Disney films are all basically like Broadway type of show tunes. So, anyways, chopping wood and hunting and fishing and
watching Wicked,
other kind of guy stuff. Regardless, let's talk some Orlando Magic basketball. Really, the biggest piece of news that broke earlier this week was Mason Williams and Jason Beatty actually both reported that Paolo Banchero has started a little bit of light on court work. We saw last week that he was doing a little bit of stretching, but now he's doing like live dribbling, a little bit of like set shooting, that kind of stuff. We haven't gotten like an official reevaluation or update from like the Magic PR department or from the front office or Jamal Mosley or anything like that, which at this stage in the game, I kind of take as a positive. Like if they were going to come out and update us, it probably means that there's bad news. Like at this point, no news is good news. And I would take the news that he's starting to do some on-court work as like good news, that he's gotten to the point where he can start doing more and progressing. If he wasn't ready to like start those steps, it would mean that the injury isn't really healing the way that they want it to. So although this is all purely just kind of, it's not speculation. I wouldn't call this like an information vacuum because we are getting some information that's being reported by these guys. But I think this is a good sign and would point to Paolo hopefully being back sometime in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think I agree. The only thing that I'm struggling with here a little bit, and I don't know if I'm struggling with or if I'm just saying I know Magic fans will struggle with, the injuries on Halloween, October 31st, going to be reevaluated in 4 to 6 weeks. Well, 4 weeks was last week. So we're approaching week 5. Actually, is today week 5? Thursday, as we're listening to this, might be 5 weeks since Halloween, I guess. I don't know. And so we're well within that 4 to 6 week range for reevaluation. If he's just now starting light workouts, that tells me it's certainly not going to be the 6 week thing, like which we figured, we assumed that, but he's not going to come back within that 6 week window. Just how far away is he though? That's the question, right? Like when you start quote unquote light workouts, when you've torn an oblique, does that mean you're 2 weeks away? Does that mean you're 4 weeks away? Does that mean you're 6 weeks? I mean, obviously none of us really know, but that's what's going to be interesting. The date I still have circled on my calendar is that OKC game. We've talked about it a lot on here. That's 2 weeks from today. That feels like a long shot, but we'll have to wait and see. Obviously things can progress quickly, but that feels like a long shot to me.
Yeah, and I would probably venture to guess that at this point of the rehab, it's basically just like how he responds to the next step, right? Like if like went through some light stretching, everything was fine. Okay, awesome. We're going to go into dribbling, set shooting. All right, you've done that the last couple of days in a row. Now we're going to start moving you around a little bit and just slowly go through those steps. Not only, I would guess that not only do they have to get him to the point where he's feeling okay to do everything, he missed, 3-4 weeks just from a conditioning standpoint. So we know the Magic. They're going to get him back to the point where he's like ready to be a full go. He's not going to come back and have like a minutes restriction or anything like that. And the fact that the Magic have been playing so well, sure, you would love to have Paolo back sooner rather than later. But as we're recording in your third in the Eastern Conference and you're 16-8 on the season, you don't really have the same level of urgency that you would have to bring Paolo back as you would if you were like 12-12 at this point.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that, like you said, there's a difference between being ready to play basketball and being ready to play NBA basketball, right? Like, it's not like, one of us trying to get ready to, recover from an injury to go play at the Y or something, right? Like, he's going to have to be at the highest level, not just so he can get out on the court, but so he can help the team win. And if he's not there, they're not going to put him out there. And so, I wish we had more information. I wish we had even an educated guess, but at this point, it's just a waiting game for those of us on the outside.
And I think I've also changed my thinking in terms of when this originally happened and we were talking about the 4 to 6 week window for the reevaluation. We were saying, well, that's when we're going to hear from, the front office. If, again, he wasn't healing the way that they wanted to, I think that would be the case. But what's the point in them coming out and saying, oh, he's doing well, we don't have a timetable? Like, obviously, if we're getting news that he's starting this type of on-court work, the Anscaped article from a couple of weeks ago, him talking about how, like around Christmas is, what he's hoping for. Nothing has really changed. There's no reason for them to come out and give us like any type of formal update and put any added pressure on the situation. So we're just kind of fingers crossed and we'll just kind of wait and see what happens there. We have an update on the watch party. We announced this on the last episode. Originally, it was going to be at Tin Roof, but the watch party that is going to be tomorrow, December 6th, when the Magic take on the Philadelphia 76ers. That watch party is now going to be at Graffiti Junction, located at 4544 Curry Ford Road. Tip-off for that game is at 7 o'clock. It's kind of a weird for like a, East large metro area tip-off. Usually we see those at 7:30, kind of like tonight's was in Philadelphia. This one's actually going to be at 7 o'clock, so the watch party will get started about 6:30, and then tip-off will be at 7. Again, that's Graffiti Junction, located at 4544 Curry Road. So sorry for the confusion, but there's been an update on that. And Kevin, earlier this week, we had some award announcements for the month of October and November, which is always weird. I always forget that they kind of hold off for the first like player of the month, coach of the month, all that kind of stuff until they get through November, because it's really just like the last week and a half of October once the season starts, and then it goes through November. But something that I either forgot about or really didn't realize was happening this season is a new defensive player of the month. And this alongside of like, if you follow Bleacher Report is really the only place that I saw reporting this, is that the Magic are going to, not the Magic, the NBA is going to start with TNT, start doing like an alternative type of broadcast, which is supposed to be like 2K, where there's shot meters and 2K badges and all of that kind of stuff. And this is coming off of, within the last couple of weeks, they're talking about doing this like 4-team tournament on the last night of All-Star Weekend, where one of the 4 teams is, like G League and like Rising Star kind of guys.
Yeah, the winner of the Rising Stars Challenge is what they said. Yeah,
we're like so far into like gimmicks right now with the NBA. Like, say what you want about the NBA Cup. It started as a gimmick. I do like it. I think more people will start to buy into it as time goes on. But like Adam Silver might be a little bit of a gimmick merchant.
So first off, the 2K thing, like you were talking about, the Magic's game against the Bucks on Tuesday has that broadcast.
Ugh.
Yeah. So you can watch that on True TV on Tuesday if you're interested in that.
Putting an NBA game on True TV is just a wild decision.
It is wild. Okay. Here's the thing, Jonathan. You and I are in a very, very interesting spot. Okay. I'm 32. You are 31.
Yes.
31. There's a line here somewhere, Jonathan, between how much of this is like cheesy gimmick stuff and how much of this is like right now us being like, get off my lawn, don't mess with my sport.
I don't think anyone wants this.
The 2K thing is wild. I'll give you that.
Like, I was going through the comments on that Bleacher Report, and everybody was sharing the same sentiment of like, who asked for this? No one asked for this. No one wants this. We don't want this.
Right.
Like, it's just, it doesn't seem like it is.
Right. But, maybe there's high schoolers out there that think that's fun, or The 4-team tournament thing for the All-Star game, I mean, that didn't really bother me. The All-Star game lately has been terrible. Like,
You
if
know
they're
what?
trying to spice it up, I mean,
Go
why
to the
not?
players and say, you guys just need to play. Simple as that. Like you guys are killing the All-Star game.
Right.
Like, think of you guys are disrespecting the game. You are disrespecting the league. Think of all of the legends that came before you: Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Shaquille O'Neal. All these guys that took the All-Star game, maybe not super seriously, but especially as a kid, like the fourth quarter of those games
Right.
was always super, super hyper competitive. And now all of a sudden you guys are just too cool that you don't give a damn about the All-Star game. Like, what are we doing? Right? Like, if you don't want to play in the All-Star game, don't go.
Right.
I don't want the gimmicks. I don't want the league trying to fabricate interest in the All-Star game. You guys are the all-stars of the best league in the world. Like, you could get hurt, in practice. Just go out there and play. That's where I am with the All-Star game. The reason that I brought up all these gimmicks is because of this Defensive Player of the Month thing.
Mm-hmm.
It almost just seems like another excuse
Yep.
to drool over Victor Wembanyama on a monthly basis,
Yep.
and for the NBA to get a few more posts about Wemby out each month.
Yep. I knew that's where it was going. Yeah. Once we saw that, and of course, Victor Wembanyama won Defensive Player of the Month for the Western Conference. It's not even like an NBA wide thing. There's one for the East and one for the West, just like Player of the Month. So, like, why are we doing a defensive player and not an offensive player of the month, right? Like, why isn't there one of each? Is that because Victor Wembanyama was never going to win the offensive player of the month, so they just, I don't know. It's a little sketchy for sure. But yeah, I mean, obviously the Magic have a great defense, so hopefully eventually they'll win one. This month was Dyson Daniels for the Hawks, right? Because he had like 9 million steals. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm sure one of the Magic players will win that this season. But yeah, very strange, very odd. Yeah.
Well, really, this might be hard to tell, but the entire reason that we're bringing it up is because Jalen Suggs was a nominee for Eastern Conference Defensive Player of the Month. Player of the Month, Eastern Conference, was Jalen Brunson, I believe. Franz Wagner was a nominee for Eastern Conference Player of the Month. He won Eastern Conference Player of the Week a couple of weeks ago. And then, to nobody's surprise, Kenny Atkinson won Coach of the Month. And Jamal Mosley was a nominee for Eastern Conference Coach of the Month. So Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, Jamal Mosley, all getting nominations for different Player of the Month, Coach of the Month awards.
Yeah, of the three of those, I would have, obviously my bias included, would have given the Coach of the Month to Jamal Mosley. But when you start 17-0 or whatever the heck the Cavs did, it's kind of hard to beat that. So I see why Kenny Atkinson won it. But again, we'll talk about it here in a second when we talk about the Magic. But being 16-8 without Paolo I guess they weren't 16-8 in November, but you get what I'm saying. Without Paolo for all those games, I mean, Coach Mosley, sign me up, man. Coach of the Month.
Yeah, they're like 13-6 or something, without Paolo, which is basically Paolo got hurt Halloween, so basically like November on. Talking about how I always forget that it's the first couple of weeks of October and into November. I think that hurt Franz and Jamal Mosley, right? I think if it had just been November, I think both of those guys would have had a much better case, especially when you add the context that, hey, for this entire month, these guys are doing this without Paolo Banchero. And Jamal Mosley, can we just take a minute or so to give Jamal Mosley his credit? As much as we've talked about Franz and Goga and a lot of the other guys stepping up and other guys have been playing well as of late, we have not given enough credit to Jamal Mosley.
That's right.
Throughout this entire thing. Again, the Magic are 13-6 without Paolo Banchero. They're 16-8 on the season. All of us would have taken 16-8, which is a 54 win pace, by the way. We all would have taken that with a fully healthy roster. And the fact that Jamal Mosley we're down multiple guys, including Paolo Banchero. We've been down multiple guys basically the entire season. And Jamal Mosley still has these guys playing at this level and has found a way to elevate everybody's play. He's just not getting enough credit. He's doing a fantastic job, not getting enough respect in terms of the Coach of the Year, Vegas betting odds and those conversations, really flying under the radar. Jamal is just doing a great job. Very rarely have I come away from any game this year being Jamal Mosley didn't do a great job tonight. It's happened maybe once or twice in the first, 24 games into the season now.
Yeah, and add to that the fact that Magic still have played the most games in the league. Like, they're just playing every other night nonstop. It's crazy. You heard what they said on the broadcast tonight? This is the Magic's fourth or fifth back-to-back?
Fifth back-to-back.
Fifth
It was
back-to-back?
Philly's second.
Right.
Yeah.
That's ludicrous, man. That's crazy. Still played the most games of any. We've had one extra day of rest, and here we are 6 weeks into the season, something like that, maybe more. I don't know. But yeah, in spite of all that, like you said, 16-8, 9-0 at home, still haven't lost at home. Hey, and the Magic, if they win on Friday, which is a big if, we'll talk about that game later, but they'll be 500 on the road as well. They're sitting here at 7-8 on the road, which is crazy considering how this team started on the road. And so all of those things combined, plus, like you said, the injuries. Yeah, to me, again, bias included, Coach Mosley is coach of the month, coach of the season so far. He's been great.
You know what I want to know, though? Like, at what point does the rest come? Like, I guess, I mean, I'm looking at the calendar. There's a good chunk, obviously, like the All-Star break. But you look around the calendar, and I guess, in March, like, you've got 3 days off there. You've got, another couple of days off there.
They'll get rest next week with the Cup. There's breaks between those games. So, but everyone gets that. That's the thing. It's not.
That's what I'm saying. Like, at one point are these other teams going to catch up to us? Because at this point, it just seems like we're playing like an 88 game season. At the pace that we're, just every single night, we're like, oh, we've played 3 more games than this team. We've played 4 more games than this team. It's just kind of crazy. I know it's all going to sort of come out in the wash and everybody plays 82 or 83 games if you end up playing in the NBA Cup final, but just really wild, like early on here, just how much the Magic have been playing.
The Six Man Show is brought to you by Jam Hot Chicken. They're proudly serving the city beautiful Jam Hot Chicken. They're bringing jams, culture, and hot chicken to the heart of Winter Park. You can find them at 400 West New England Avenue, Suite 13 in Hannibal Square in beautiful Winter Park. Who is Jam Hot Chicken? They make amazing hot chicken. Go figure. It's awesome. They're a Nashville and LA inspired hot chicken shack, locally owned and operated. And when we say it's good, we mean it's good. The reviews, they say it all right. They were ranked number 4 in Yelp's top Florida restaurants of 2023. It's no surprise because they're the real deal. Follow them at Jam Hot Chicken on all social media and check out jamhotchickenfl.com to access the menu, online ordering, and all things Jam Hot. Again, we highly recommend Jam Hot Chicken, not just because the food is amazing, but because they love the Orlando Magic. They love the Orlando Magic fan community, so we can't recommend them enough. Go check them out. They're in Winter Park, and when you do, just let them know that the Six Man Show sent you.
This episode is also brought to you by Suggs Mugs, Gear 95 Shred, Mo Riz, Wagner, Seth Berry, and Richard Tuttle. These are some of our Hall of Fame and elite tier patrons who went over to patreon.com/The Six Man Show, where for as little as $2 a month, you can help financially support the show. We can't do anything without our patrons. Help pay for equipment and software, allow us to do things like in-person events and watch parties. Again, we can't do it without our patrons. So if you would like to join and help support the Six Man Show, again, you can find us over at patreon.com/The Six Man Show. And now back to the episode. Talking about the NBA Cup, by the way, the Magic, with their 15-point loss on Tuesday to the New York Knicks, the Magic did not win East Group A, but they have ended up as the Eastern Conference wild card in the NBA Cup, finishing in second place in their group with a plus 45 point differential, which they had to lose by 36 or less to the New York Knicks on Tuesday. And at like a good chunk of that game, that was in real danger. It was like, man, we're not even going to, not only are we not going to clinch the group, but we are not even going to advance. We are getting beat by the Knicks that badly. And we will talk about the Knicks game in a couple of minutes here. But Magic finish as the wild card, as the 4th seed in the quarterfinal of the NBA Cup for the Eastern Conference. So they will go up against the number 1 seed Milwaukee Bucks next Tuesday in Milwaukee. That game will be on TNT. But Kevin, do you want to talk just a little bit about the NBA Cup and the way that the schedule is going to break down?
Yeah, so first off, again, no extra break because the Magic play Sunday night at home against the Phoenix Suns. So then they got to go straight away and fly out to Milwaukee for this game. So yeah, like you said, 7 o'clock Tuesday on TNT. That game's also going to be on FanDuel Sports Florida. I know
That's where I'll be watching it.
Yeah, this past Tuesday night's game was not, and so fortunately this one will be on both. What happens after that? It's pretty much like a choose your own adventure thing because there's a lot of things that can happen, right? Obviously, Magic Bucks, whoever wins that game goes to Vegas. So if the Magic win that game, they go to Vegas. The semifinals are on Saturday the 14th, okay? So if the Magic beat the Bucks, they go to Vegas, they play the semifinal on the 14th against the winner of Knicks Hawks. And then if they win that, the final for the NBA Cup is on Tuesday the 17th of December on ABC. So that would be kind of crazy. What happens if they lose? Let's say they lose to the Bucks. Then they would play, obviously, the loser of the Hawks-Knicks. That schedule is also weird. So that game will be on Sunday no matter what. If the Knicks lose, the Knicks will come to Kia Center on Sunday, December 15th at 6 p.m. That'll be that game. If the Hawks lose, the Magic go to Atlanta to play the Hawks Sunday the 15th at 5 p.m. Who gets to decide that the Magic have to be the road team in that? I don't know, but whatever. That's basically the options there. Magic win, they go to Vegas, they play the semifinal on Saturday. Magic lose, they play either the Knicks at 6 p.m. at home or the Hawks at 5 p.m. at home on that Sunday the 15th. So a whole bunch of things, lots of things that can happen. But yeah, next week will be very interesting. If you recall last year, I remember talking with coincidentally Andrew Claudio of Knicks Film School. The Knicks made the knockout round of the Cup last year, and they lost in this quarterfinal game, just like the Magic are coming up against here. They lost that game, and their consolation prize was they had to play the Celtics that next game because the Celtics also lost their quarterfinal. So they ended up playing the Boston Celtics 5 times last year in the regular season, which is crazy. Fortunately, the Magic aren't dealing with quite that same situation, right? Like they're either playing the Knicks or the Hawks. So it could be worse, but the whole thing is still very weird and unique. And obviously we've never been through it. So it'll be interesting to see how next week shakes out.
One good thing is that the Bucks also play on Sunday. So they're at Brooklyn. So both teams will be traveling. The Magic will be traveling a little bit further than the Bucks. But at least it's not the case of Milwaukee, just like an extra day off sitting at home, sort of waiting for you. So at least there's not going to be like a big rest or, massive like travel disadvantage.
Right.
Although Milwaukee obviously, will have home court. Yeah, it's cool this year to be moving on to the knockout round. Last year, we waited until the last night of the Cup stage and got bounced because of the Celtics just destroying the Bulls and finishing ahead of us in point differential. And this year was kind of the opposite, where we both finished with the same record, but we had the better point differential than the Celtics, and the Celtics are missing out here. So each Magic player, just for making the quarterfinal, every Magic player gets like an extra $51,000. And if they beat the Bucks and they move on to the semifinal, it's like an extra $100,000. If you make it to the final, it's an extra $200,000. And if you win the final, it's like an extra $500,000. So the rest of the way here, the Magic are literally playing with house money. For guys, maybe like Franz Wagner or Jonathan Isaac, that extra $50,000 may not be a big difference. But for the two-way guys like Trevelyan Queen and Mac McClung, like that's a 10% pay raise, like right on the top for those guys. So yeah, I'm happy that because there was a scenario where if the Magic lost by like between 34 and 36 points to the Celtic or to the Knicks, that we would be going back to MSG for this next matchup. But I'd much rather be going to Milwaukee. And I guess this is a good segue into talking about this Knicks game, but yet another game where the Magic are on the road on national TV and just really struggled. The Magic came out of the gates pretty strong, 14-6 after the first, 4 and some change, like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope hits a 3. And all of a sudden, like you're feeling pretty good about yourself. And it was just literally completely downhill the rest of the way in this game. You go into the half trailing the Knicks by 20, and the Magic trailed by as much as 37 points in this game. Again, you were in real trouble. It was getting pretty dangerous. Like you just might not make it out, but the Magic outscore the Knicks 31-15 in the fourth quarter, and you only lose by 15. This game, don't let anybody tell you, this game was not anywhere near that close. Magic definitely struggled, I felt like, with the Knicks' defensive pressure, but the Knicks just shot the ball incredibly well. 15 of 35 from behind the arc, 43 of 85 from the floor, and 20 of 20 at the free throw line. Just looking at their box score, OG Anunoby had 18, Karl Anthony Towns had 23, Mikal Bridges had 19, Jalen Brunson had 21, Miles McBride had 18. And when you look over at the Magic, it's 30 from Franz Wagner. Franz was awesome. It's 20 from Mo Wagner. You had 14 from Jalen Suggs, but it was 5 of 16 from the floor. The Magic just like real, other than Franz and Mo, right? And like Mo, some of that was in garbage time, but Franz like pretty consistently through the game was like getting good looks and was able to knock those down, but just like nobody else was able to make anything happen. You're 9 of 39 from deep, 23%, 43% from the floor, 15 turnovers in this one. It really just felt like maybe it's the long road trip, right? Like the Magic, what was this? Their like 5th or 6th day in New York City after playing both games in Brooklyn. Then you're playing this one, against the Knicks. You're in MSG, prime time on TNT. Like it just felt like the lights were a little bit too bright. And I understand people that are concerned at this point where it's like we have a nationally televised game. We're on the road. I'm not super excited for the next one. I've got to tell you, you get excited for these nationally televised games, and a loss like this is frustrating in and of itself. But when you're on national TV, and it's like we've been saying, the Magic need more attention. They should have more nationally televised games. When you repeatedly get on national TV and you have performances like this, it's embarrassing, honestly, as a fan. Like it was a tough game to watch. It was very frustrating to watch. Kevin, what were your takeaways?
Well, when the highlight of the game is the first 4 minutes, that's never a good thing. That's never a good thing.
Yeah.
That was pretty miserable. Here's the thing. You talked a lot about the offensive struggles, and unfortunately, we're kind of used to that, right? Like that's just another night for the Orlando Magic. What wasn't normal was the defensive struggles. Like you give up 71 points to the New York Knicks in that first half. Now, obviously, the last 3 of those was a miracle heave at the buzzer, which was kind of crazy. But yeah, you give up 71 points to the Knicks in the first half. It's never going to be good enough. That's more disappointing to me than anything. Now, part 1 of this is the Knicks right now are on a crazy tear. Like offensively, statistically, they are, again, it's early, but statistically, they're one of the best offenses in NBA history. Okay. Are they going to sustain that over the whole season? Who knows? But through 20 games or whatever they've played, it's like up there, like top 5, top 6, something like that. So they're always like the way they're going this season, they're going to score, but I really hoped that our defense was going to be able to slow them down enough to keep us in this game, at least for most of it. So to be out of it so early, especially because of lack of defense, that was kind of surprising and disappointing. Like I felt right away, like in that first quarter, I know you go up 14-6, but the defense just wasn't right. Like from the jump, if you ask me, like a lot of not just easy looks, but how many times did we foul a jump shooter there in that game? Like it was so strange. That's not something we're used to seeing. But to me, that is the ultimate like sign of just guys being super hyped up, super excited, like overzealous, like not necessarily thinking with their head, but more so thinking with their heart in moments like that, like jumping, like leaping into jump shooters. Like the only way you do that is if you're just being overzealous, trying to make a big play and get a block or whatever, right? Does all that come from, like you said, bright lights, TNT, NBA Cup, win the game, win the group type thing? I think it's possible. I think it's absolutely possible. It felt like that to me. It felt like the moment was too big. I know a lot of Magic fans won't like hearing that, but that's what it felt like to me. And obviously it's very disappointing for the second game in a row, go to MSG and get embarrassed. But hey, the good thing is you get another chance to redeem yourself on Tuesday on national TV. Now, will we do it? I don't know. But yeah, it's good. At least we get another opportunity to try to figure it out pretty quick.
Yeah, it was fouling jump shooters. It was like biting on every single pump fake. Like guys were just
Jonathan
out of
Isaac,
position.
like
Yeah,
man.
it was really it was all around like maybe not all around because the offense was pretty on brand, but like defensively it was a very uncharacteristic performance, like up and down the board, right? Like Wendell, he's in the game and no Goga in this one. We skipped straight over the state of the Magic. By the way, I guess we'll do the state of the Magic here on the back end. But part of that we talk about the injury report. Goga Batadze didn't play in this one because of the sprained ankle that he suffered the game before in Brooklyn. But like Wendell's out there to at least try to slow down Karl Anthony Towns, and that dude was just like straight line drives to the rim all night long. There was no stopping him. I mean, he was knocking down everything, regardless. I mean, their entire team was, but just a really uncharacteristic defensive performance is what it felt like. And when we go back to earlier in the year at Cleveland on what was that, ESPN,
yeah.
When we go back to the playoff series, all the games at Cleveland, the OKC game is a little, I mean, you're at home for that one, but like when you look at that in totality up to this point, I understand where people are coming from, that it's like, man, we just struggle in prime time, and it's painful as a fan to go through this. Like, you don't even want to open up social media because your team is just getting clowned at that point. But it's like a necessary evil that this team has to go through. You have to see, like, when the lights are brightest, which guys are going to rise to the occasion and what other guys are going to kind of crumble. And you need to find that out and see who either is going to be here long term or who eventually you may need to ship out and upgrade. Like, if guys just aren't going to be able to be ready for the moment, you got to find guys eventually that can. But it's way too early to make any type of those like big picture conclusions. But it's definitely a little bit concerning. It is something that I think should get better as they get more experience in moments like that.
I think something that maybe can't really be forgotten here, like you said, Goga being out, that was a late scratch. I think there's a very real chance that this team went into this game with a pretty clear game plan that included Goga, especially obviously dealing with Karl Anthony Towns. And last minute they had to scrap it, right? Like throwing Tristan da Silva out there. He started, however many games, once Paolo went out and did well, but in a very different role, right? Like you're throwing him out there with Franz and Wendell, and that's a line that we hadn't really seen as far as starting goes. And so I think that also probably threw them off to some extent there, because they had a couple days to game plan for this game, and like you said, probably had a certain, way they planned to go about it. And when that has to change, 90 minutes before the game, that's obviously going to throw you off a little bit. And so I think that could have been part of it as well. But yeah, on the whole, that still shouldn't change, our identity as, a defensive first team, a focused defensive team, a team that likes to try their best to defend without fouling. And yeah, none of that really happened there in that one.
Yeah, those are always the most frustrating losses, is like when the Magic just don't really look like the Magic, unfortunately. Right. I'm going to go through this really quickly. Forgot to do it at the top of the show, but the weekly state of the Magic. Right now, the Magic are 1-1 this week so far, with a loss to the Knicks and a win on Wednesday over the Philadelphia 76ers. They're 16-8, winners of 13 of their last 15. They're third in the Eastern Conference, 4 games back of Cleveland, 3 games back of Boston, a game and a half up on the Knicks, 3.5 games up on the Bucks and the Hawks, 4 games up on Miami, 5.5 games up on Brooklyn, 6 games up on Chicago, and 6.5 games up on Indiana. It's crazy how well the Magic have been playing so far and how much other teams like, Chicago or Brooklyn or Indiana has struggled, but like you're still only 6.5 games up on those teams. Like, few bad weeks, you could still find yourself in the play-in. It's just really the state of the Eastern Conference this year. The Magic are 23rd so far on the season in offensive rating, with an offensive rating of 110.8. Third in defensive rating with a defensive rating of 105.4. Ninth in the NBA in overall net rating with a positive net rating of 5.4. Paolo Banchero still out with the torn oblique. We talked about him starting to do some light on-court work this week. Gary Harris has missed the last 4 games with a left hamstring strain. and Goga Batadze missed Tuesday's game versus the Knicks. He left Wednesday's game early, like with a fall in the first half, but he did come back in the fourth quarter, so we'll have to wait and see what's going on with Goga, and the back had a really nasty fall. Yeah. And then Jonathan Isaac left the game in the fourth quarter with right leg cramps. He did end up coming back to the bench after the game. He said he's fine, it's just leg cramps. But, they're going to be very, very cautious with J.I. always. So just keep an eye on J.I.'s status really for Friday. So let's talk now about the game tonight, Wednesday night, against the Philadelphia 76ers. Other than the losing streak, right as Paolo goes out, you lose to Chicago, then you lose the first four games without Paolo. Road trip, playing quality opponents, all that stuff is kind of tough. Since that point, the Magic have not had consecutive losses. You go 6-game win streak, the loss to the Clippers, 6-game win streak, you have the loss to the New York Knicks, and then you pick up the win on Wednesday against the Philadelphia 76ers. Maybe this is the start of a 6-game win streak. Who knows? That's just the way that the season has gone so far.
That would make us NBA Cup champions, by the way. I'll just say that.
Yes, it would. That would be very nice. We'll just have to wait and see. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
But you just felt good after the loss to the Knicks about the Magic being able to bounce back. You didn't really necessarily know what the result was going to be, but you could probably bet that overall it was going to be a better effort. And it was a better effort. I don't want to say it was exactly the defensive effort that we're looking for, but you also have to remember that at this point, the Magic have been on the road for, over a week, a week and a half now. Is it a week and a half? Now that we're going from 1 month to the other, almost a week here.
Yeah.
And they're going to end up being on the road, just about 10 days. So you got one more road game, well, you get to go home. Yes, you do, because you have the Suns on Sunday. Yeah. I'm trying to think about all this NBA Cup stuff in my mind. It's all pretty fresh. But so, bounce back performance against the Philadelphia 76ers. No Paul George, no Joel Embiid. This was just, quite frankly, like a game that you had to go out and have. And so far, the first couple of matchups that we've had against this Philadelphia team so far to start the season, the story for me for Philly has been Jared McCain. I know he's really been the big story for them all season, but he's played just exceptionally well against the Magic in their first couple of meetings. And when you look at their box score, really, if it wasn't for Jared McCain, this game would not have been close. He was almost single-handedly keeping them in the game. And for the Magic, it really was Franz Wagner. We can talk about some other guys that had decent nights, but Franz Wagner, 35 points, 12 of 23 from the floor, 1 of 6 from behind the arc, 10 of 10 at the free throw line, added 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 block. Just Franz Wagner on a random Wednesday night, putting up Scotty Barnes' career high that was being celebrated, last night. Nice little jab at
Don't tell Raptors Twitter you said that, because they're going to come after you.
We have jabbed and sparred with all types of Raptors fans over the course of the years. I'm totally and completely ready for that. But the Magic did have a sizable lead in the first half against the 76ers. They had a 15-point lead, and then this game was tied at the half. It's tied going into the fourth quarter. The Magic had a pretty sizable lead in the last couple of minutes, and then it was like a parade to the free throw line for the Philadelphia 76ers, where this game ultimately comes down to, maybe not ultimately comes down to, but definitely was swayed heavily in the Magic's favor in the last minute when a reach-in call, Anthony Black reaching in on Tyrese Maxey, is missed by the officials. Magic get the ball back. At that point, you have, I think it was a 2 or a 3-point lead. It just becomes a parade to the free throw line for the Magic at the end of it. They knock down their free throws. And it did kind of feel like you escaped with the win. There were some questionable, borderline egregious missed calls on the Magic side of the floor as well, late in this game. So maybe, with that missed call on Maxey, it kind of feels like it evens out. But I wasn't thrilled that was the way that this game ended. But ultimately, you come away with the win. And I do think for the majority of this game, the Magic were the better team. And you see them, be able to pull this one out. Another game where the Magic don't shoot the ball well, 8 of 29 from behind the arc, 27%, but almost shoot 50% from the floor. 16 offensive rebounds in this game. Jonathan Isaac was a big part of that. 13 turnovers. Don't love to see that, but 7 blocks, like another pretty solid defensive performance from the Magic. Philadelphia shoots 48% from the floor, 36% from behind the arc. Again, their 3-point shooting kind of kept them in that one. But, well-coached team, even though I hate Nick Nurse, he does a good job of preparing his teams and just giving them a game plan that is going to put them, for the most part, in a position to be competitive on any given night. And yeah, again, not a stellar performance, not anything to write home about. We're not going to look back on this game and celebrate this at the end of the year. But again, the Magic just keep finding ways to win games, and good teams find ways to do that.
Yeah, I've said this a couple times on the show, but I'm just very grateful that NBA players don't have the same mindset and set of emotions that fans have. Because if they went into this game feeling the same way that a lot of Magic fans felt after the Knicks game 24 hours earlier, we would have lost by 40. Right? I think a lot of Magic fans, myself included to some extent, were a little bit, just kind of not demoralized, but we got embarrassed, Tuesday night, and it was a reality check, might be a good way to put it. That there's still this significant gap. Now, obviously, we're without Paolo, without Goga. That's part of it, but there's still a significant gap, I think, between the true contenders and where the Magic are, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think we're right on schedule for that. So if it was up to us, like our emotions going into Wednesday's game, it's like, oh man, we're cooked, whatever. So give the Magic credit for being able to have short memories there and just bounce back the very next night. Tough place to play. I know Philly's a mess right now. Okay, I'm not going to sugarcoat this too much. Like, they're a disaster. The fact that they didn't play Paul George and Embiid again tonight, I just can't imagine what that what that locker room is like. Like, I just has to be such a roller coaster. However, it's still an NBA team. They still have Tyrese Maxey. The Magic shut Tyrese Maxey down for the most part tonight, which was great. So I'll give them credit for that. But yeah, like you said, you just got to find a way to win it. Just got to find a way. And they did, This game counts just as much as the ones in April. So I'll give them credit for that. Friday will be very interesting. I think it's going to be interesting because Paul George will definitely play, barring some sort of setback. Joel Embiid, you just never know when he's going to play, but he very likely will play on Friday. So that'll be very interesting, and it'll totally change the landscape of this game. But at least for tonight, again, proud of the team for the way they fought. Again, it got dicey at the end. Magic, not just the missed call there, but they couldn't buy a bucket in the last half of the fourth quarter, and it made it too close for comfort and all those kinds of things. But in the end, like I said, win is a win, and you'll take it, especially on the road, especially on the second night of a back-to-back.
You'll definitely take it. Again, you're 16-8 now, still third in the Eastern Conference. We all would take that, Paolo or no Paolo. A couple of guys, Kevin, that I want to talk to you about that. In this game tonight, all of it's easy when you're at home and you've got the crowd going and you're winning games by a million, all of that kind of stuff. You blow out Brooklyn to start the road trip, and then you really have to scratch and claw and fight for that win in the second part of that series there, and then you get blown out by the Knicks, and then you have to really fight and claw for a win in Philadelphia. All of the vibes that we had 8-9 days ago, not that they're gone. Like you're saying, the vibes are gone. It's just usually you're saying that they're gone and they're not coming back. I don't think we're going to get back to the vibes per se until this team gets back home. It has a little bit of a homestand, and it does right now. It feels like a team that is tired, that wants to get home. Really a team that needs Paolo Banchero. I know we're not going to be rushing him back, but that is really the shot in the arm that I think this team could really benefit from right now. I wouldn't say necessarily they desperately need it because they're still winning games. Again, we've talked about the record and all the success that they've had. But offensively, the help that Franz was getting over the course of the last couple of weeks just hasn't really been there on a consistent basis. And two players that a lot of fans are pointing to in particular are Jalens Suggs and Wendell Carter Jr. Wendell Carter Jr. obviously just being a few games back from the plantar fasciitis that he was dealing with, and Jalens Suggs is a guy who I would say so far offensively has had a bit of like an up and down, first quarter of the season. I just want to really take a look at like the last 10 games, just to take a look at a pretty solid, sample size here. And this isn't a stretch, by the way, where the Magic have really won a ton of games. I think they're, 9-1 or 8-2 over the course of their last 10 games. But over the course of the last 10 games here, at least prior to tonight, Jalens Suggs in 29.5 minutes, averaging 15.4 points per game, 2.6 rebounds, 4 assists, 2.3 turnovers, 1.2 steals, and just under a block per game. But he's shooting 40% from the floor and 32.8% from behind the arc in those games. And of his 12.8 field goal attempts, 6.8 of those, almost 7 of his 12.8 field goal attempts are coming from behind the arc. So he's taking a high volume of threes, but he's shooting just 32.8%. Obviously much lower than the 39% that he was shooting last year. If we take a look at his splits over the course of the season so far, he is at 31.4% from behind the arc so far on the season. Again, down from the 39.7%. I do feel like part of this is just like the offensive responsibility that he feels. We knew he was getting more of that going into this season, but especially since Paolo Banchero has been out, I do feel like he's been every bit as good defensively. His nomination for Eastern Defensive Player of the Month, Eastern Conference Defensive Player of the Month would tell you that. But I don't think, the hope when Paolo went out is that Jalen could elevate and be like this team's true number 2 while Paolo is out. And I would say, every other game he's doing that right now, maybe, but he's just not doing it at as consistent of a level as we would hope. What's been your take on Jalen without Paolo?
Yeah, I think every other game might be a bit of a stretch. Feels like maybe one in every 3 or 4.
Maybe. Yeah, I didn't want to go all the way there, but maybe that's more accurate.
I know. It's tough because on the one hand, my brain still looks at Jalens Suggs like, oh, young, developing, give him time, give him reps. The other part of it is this is year 4 for Jalen, and so at what point does it go from this is a young guy developing, learning a new role, learning blah, 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 to that's just who he is, And are we there yet? I don't think so. I'm not at the point now where it's just like, well, that's Jalen's skill set. That's what he's good at, offensively speaking, and that's his ceiling, essentially, right? I don't think I'm there yet, especially, again, because all this has been done without Paolo. Once Paolo gets back into the fold, does that open up more space and more opportunities for Jalen to operate? Probably, yeah. But it doesn't guarantee it, So it's tough. Like, obviously, we all love Jalens Suggs and love what he brings to the defensive end. Offensively, first and foremost, we need him to be a knockdown shooter when he's open, from kickouts or whatever. But then, like you said, with Paolo out especially, we'd love to see him be a little bit better offensively beyond just being a spot-up shooter, and we just haven't seen that lately, And so that's kind of tough. And again, it's that internal debate for me. Is this just who Jalen is? Like, is that his skill set? Is that just what it is? Or is there still another gear that he can reach? And I honestly just don't know the answer to that.
I have some data here on the splits, because in my mind, I was thinking, is there a big difference between Jalen at home and Jalen on the road? And we all know Jalen's personality. I don't think it would be crazy to wonder that, but the data doesn't really support that. So in 9 home games, he's shooting 32% from 3, 39.6% from the floor. On the road, he's shooting 41% from the floor and 30.9% from behind the arc. So just really about the same. Like, it really comes out in the wash. What I do think is interesting, and it's difficult because it's an incredibly small sample size, but in the month of October, in 5 games with Paolo Banchero, 16.8 points per game, 45% from the floor, 42.5% from behind the arc. In November, 14.9 points, 27.8% from the floor, 27.8% from three. And this was before tonight, but in 3 games in December, or no, this is including tonight, sorry. 14.3 points, 35.7% from the floor, 26.3% from three. So again, I think the 5 games in October is really too small of a sample size. Ultimately, I think he's just being asked to do too much right now and to carry too much of the load, and he just may not quite be ready for that in the way that we had hoped that he is. Right. Which I think your question is like, is this just who he is? Is there still room to develop? I feel like we have seen enough flashes to think that maybe it's not the most likely outcome, but I don't think it's super unlikely that he could grow into being more of that. But you're talking about for a couple of games at a time. You're not talking weeks at a time, without, Paolo Banchero. I think that might be asking him to do a bit much. Luckily he's still awesome, defensively but there are certain times where it's like offensively just still a little bit out of control. Like if he's pressured and playing under duress, still want to see, that aspect of his game improve a little bit. And then the other player that Magic fans have started to talk about has been Wendell Carter Jr. So far on the season, in 11 games, Wendell is playing 25.6 minutes per game, averaging 7.6 points, shooting 50% from the floor, 16.7% from behind the arc, averaging 7.6 rebounds, 2.3 assists, a steal, and just over a half block per game. And according to Cleaning the Glass, 34% of Wendell Carter's field goal attempts are coming from three. So 1 out of every 3 of Wendell's shot attempts are coming from behind the arc, and he's currently shooting 17% from the floor. Last few games since coming back from injury, he's been playing next to Goga Bitadze. And in terms of, all the impact numbers, like he's a plus 12.4 point differential when Wendell is on the floor for the Orlando Magic. Like the quote unquote impact metrics would tell you that he is a positive when he's on the floor. But I feel like the eye test doesn't quite always match that with Wendell. How much of this is a product of the guys that he is playing with on the floor? I know he brings you the defensive impact, but then you watch a game, like Tuesday against the Knicks, and Karl Anthony Towns is really just having his way with Wendell Carter Jr. And then, he struggles finishing around the rim. Like if it's not a lob or a wide open layup, it's like it's a 50-50 shot with Wendell, whether or not it's going in. And he just spends, for my opinion, too much time like hovering around the perimeter offensively instead of, maybe finding, space closer to the rim where he may not be clogging the paint, but is able to, crash the glass a little bit more and offer you maybe a few more offensive rebounds a game, a little bit more of a presence there. And it doesn't feel like Wendell is the same player that he was a couple of years ago when he was, 15.2 points per game, 52% from the floor, 35% from behind the arc, 8.7 rebounds, and seemed just overall better defensively, in my opinion. For me, Kevin, I don't know how you feel, but I don't think Wendell is a good fit for this team long term. I don't think it's to the same degree. I wouldn't put it anywhere close to the same degree as last season, but I find myself having echoes of the same emotions that I did when Markelle Fultz was on the floor a lot last year, where, again, it feels a little bit far to put them in the same conversation because, like, Markelle Fultz isn't even in the NBA right now. But when you see other guys on the floor, and the Magic just seem to be a more cohesive unit with a guy like Goga Bitadze, for example, when it's just Goga in the lineup, yes, I know those guys have been playing well together, But if I just have one or the other, because we know one of those guys is going to the bench when Paolo Banchero comes back, at this point, I just feel like Goga is the better fit for this roster. And the further and further that we get away from that extension that Wendell just signed, before the season started, meaning we cannot trade Wendell Carter Jr. at all this season, the more it seems like that extension is going to end up being a mistake. Now, how much is that mistake going to cost you? I don't know. But it did feel a little bit hasty. Like my initial gut reaction was like, oh, I don't really know what he's done to, really warrant an extension at that number. And then I kind of tried to talk myself into it. And some other people were like, hey, even in the moment, this doesn't seem like a great idea. It feels like it wasn't the right move. I don't know how you feel.
I struggle with this one too, because do you remember, Jonathan, this season before he got hurt? Like Wendell played well. Like Wendell got us turning heads. We were like, whoa, look at Wendell. Like he's got explosiveness back.
I felt like that lasted about 10 minutes, the explosiveness.
Bro, well, he only lasted 10 minutes. Remember, he was out pretty quickly there, week 2 or whatever it was. But the rebounding, remember, he had double-digit rebounds in the first 3 or 4 games, which he hardly did last season. And so we were all like, hold on, is Wendell back, right? Then he gets hurt, and he's been back now this is his 5th game, I believe. Let's see, Chicago, Brooklyn, New York. Yeah, so this was his 5th game back tonight. And he's just not looked the same. And so is Wendell playing hurt again? Maybe. Who knows? But even if he is, that goes back to the age-old issue with Wendell, which is just availability, reliability.
We didn't even talk about that.
Right. And because that's a whole different argument. You could argue that regardless of what's happening on the court, like the fact that he is so often unavailable is another negative potentially. But again, that's just my question right now. Is he playing hurt again? I think it's possible. To me, he is absolutely a shell of himself right now compared to what he was just a month ago. Like, again, those first handful of games before he got hurt, it was like, wow, okay, he's going to be a real weapon for us. So to see that happen again, I don't know. I hope it's just a slump. I hope he is dealing with some injury and he's going to get better and he's going to go back to how he was to start the season. But do I expect that to happen? No, not at this point. He has not given us enough over these 5 games since his return for us to expect that. And what makes it doubly hard is that Goga is just a winner. Like, you just can't argue with the fact that we win ball games when Goga starts right now. And so that's not helping Wendell's case either. So yeah, all of it, I hope it's just a stretch. It's just a bad situation. I don't know. But it certainly doesn't feel like that to me.
Yeah, I mean, again, we didn't even talk about the fact, the injury history and going back to the beginning of the season, like you mentioned, a 14 rebound game to start the season in Miami, then 11, 10, 10, 7. Then he's out for a game against Cleveland, comes back against Dallas, plays almost 9 minutes, has 1 rebound in that game, gets hurt in that game. But this guy, he's playing, 17, 18 minutes against Chicago, has 4 rebounds, 26 minutes against Brooklyn, 7 rebounds, 27 minutes against Brooklyn, 7 rebounds, 19 minutes against the Knicks, has 7 rebounds. Looking tonight against Philadelphia, he played 31 minutes, 6 rebounds. Part of this, I do think he, being a little bit closer to the rim, if he wasn't living on the, perimeter offensively, and like you're shooting 17% from behind the arc on the season. You were never this great 3-point shooter. You were league average at best. It just doesn't seem like when Wendell is pulling up for 3, I'm like, we literally could get almost any other shot in this offensive series, and it's going to be a better shot than what we're getting with Wendell. I think I'm just ready to move on. Like that's where I am. I know. And the thing is, because of the extension, you cannot move on right now. But it's like, what is the alternative? When Paolo Banchero comes back, you've got Wendell on this extension. you literally have to play him. You can't just bench him. Then he's going to have, you're looking around the league like this guy's going to be making, $20 million in a couple of years, and he's getting benched, not going to have any trade value. But it's like, well, what the heck do you do? Like, you just bench Goga Batadze, who's been playing really well and, arguably is the better player right now. Do you bench Mo Wagner, who's really in this time that Paolo's been out, has been your second best offensive player most nights? It just, the front office, feels like prematurely gave themselves an issue here with Wendell and what they're doing. Because again, like the initial like gut reaction was like, really? Like you're signing Wendell to an extension? Like what has he really done to warrant that? When basically since he signed the extension, he had a good year in 22-23, but since then has very much regressed each year and just is not healthy, consistent enough, and long enough for this team. So I get the people that are frustrated at this point with Wendell.
Yeah,
because he has to give you that defense on a night in and night out basis. And if he's not hitting threes, he's got to be in there like getting you double-digit rebounds every single night.
Right. I don't think I'm fully out on Wendell yet. If anything, just because I feel like he has to be playing hurt.
Where do you see his long-term fit being with the team?
That's what I was going to say. Like, but I certainly understand people that, number one, are out on him, and number two, looking at the long-term plan, it's hard to see it. Right? Even at Wendell at his best, at his very best, does his skill set give the Magic things that they need? Right? And the answer might be no. Tonight, honestly, this Sixers game was probably the most disappointing one of all for me when it comes to Wendell because of who he was playing. Like, there was no Joel Embiid over there. There was no Andre Drummond over there. Like, why didn't he have a better night? When he's going up against Yabusele and Bona and, right? Like, there's no reason why Wendell shouldn't have more than a field goal.
And Yabusele with 15 and 7 on 6 of 8 shooting.
Yeah, Wendell should have more than 6 rebounds, right? In 31 minutes against those big men, right? To me, that's the part that was frustrating tonight. It was just like, dude, that this game is there for the taking. Just go freaking take it. And he's just so passive. And I don't know, man. I don't know if that comes from an injury. I don't know if that comes from a lack of confidence. I don't know where it comes from, but it's not working right now. It's just not. And I hate to bring up all this whole big negative thing after a win, but these, like, not only do these games count, but like we're trying to build something, obviously long term, but even short term. Like we're trying to improve playoff seeding, and I'll just be honest to all Magic fans, like this whole Franz single-handedly carrying us to wins, I don't know how it's going to translate for the rest of December because your schedule is about to get crazy. I know you're going to be at home after the Cup. You're home the whole rest of the month. This whole thing is translated well with the bad teams. I don't know how it's going to work against the good teams. And so that's where I'm like, someone really, at least one, probably two guys every night have to step up to help Franz, or we're going to be cooked against the best teams in the league this month. And so I'm hoping, like I said, maybe Wendell can snap out of it and show some of that. But to not take advantage of those matchups tonight was just really disappointing for me.
Just to give you all a snapshot of the rest of the month here. Friday at Philly, Sunday home against Phoenix, at Milwaukee. There's going to be another NBA Cup adjacent game. Either that's another team that gets knocked out or if you're advancing. Then Oklahoma City on the 19th at home. Miami, Boston, Miami, New York, Brooklyn, Detroit. You start the year with Detroit, who also, hasn't really been playing that bad this year. And Franz has played, well enough. And by the way, like, we just keep getting breaks, right? Like, if we start to go back to like when the winning started, like against New Orleans, like most of New Orleans' team was out. Washington is bad. Charlotte was missing a ton of guys. You scrape a win together against the Indiana Pacers. Guys were out for Philadelphia. Beal and Kevin Durant were out against Phoenix. There was no
Nurkic.
Norm Powell against the Clippers. You had a great win over the Los Angeles Lakers, the buzzer beater in LA for Franz. You beat the Detroit Pistons without Cade Cunningham. Again, Charlotte was down a ton of guys. You ended up beating Chicago. Brooklyn just is not that great this year. You beat them. Then you get absolutely killed by the Knicks. And then you beat Philadelphia, who again was without Joel Embiid and Paul George. Now, who knows what their status is going to be Friday? Paul George will probably play. Joel Embiid probably up in the air. But then Sunday, no Kevin Durant. He's going to be out at least the next week. So, yes, the Magic can only play who's in front of them, but the Magic have been getting a lot of injury luck the other way.
Right.
Because if a lot of these teams are healthy and you don't have Paolo Banchero, you could argue that the Magic have a few more losses at this point in the season. But you've been getting by really for the most part with not only Franz, but both the Wagner boys stepping up on a nightly basis. We are getting into the point of the schedule where it's hey, these guys have really carried everybody else for long enough. We need other guys to step up on a night in and night out basis. It can't be, KCP having, 19 one night and then 6 points the next, or, Jalens Suggs, scoring in double digits on 50% shooting and then scoring 17 points on sub 40% shooting the next night. We can't have Wendell, playing 30 minutes and grabbing 6 rebounds.
Just 2 points.
Can't have that kind of stuff, Yeah. This is the point in the schedule where, sure, you're 16-8 right now, but, by the end of February, you could be just a couple of games above 500 when it's said and done.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically where I'm at this point in time. Got another couple of games here to end the week. You got Philly on Friday, back home on Sunday to take on the Suns. And yeah, I mean, I don't think there's really much else to say about these couple of games here, Kevin. Just time for other guys to start to step up on a more consistent basis. It's been great, right? Getting wins, but you've bought yourself a cushion. You want to keep that cushion when Paolo comes back, right? If you're 9-10 games above 500 when Paolo comes back, that's when you're really putting yourself in a position to be the second or the third or the fourth seed in the Eastern Conference. You don't want to look back if Paolo comes back the last week of December and be man, we're sitting at third in the Eastern Conference and now we're, 7th or 8th and we need to fight our way back up the standings. You come back with Paolo Banchero and this team is sitting in third or fourth. That's when this team is really in a real position to make a run and make a deep postseason run as well. Yeah,
I agree. And postseason is not a question mark for me, right? The Magic aren't going to be in danger of missing the postseason,
right?
So that's a relief, right? It's pretty cool. And I say that I pray that there's not some kind of collapse that makes that happen. But yeah, it's just we're getting in the thick of the schedule, and so I for one am excited about it. I'm excited about this NBA Cup game next week in Milwaukee. I think that's going to be fun. I hope the team shows up for that. But yeah, it's a lot of tough games, a lot of TNT games, which we already mentioned is kind of weird. Milwaukee next week and OKC the next week. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's a lot of opportunities for this team. That's another way to look at it. It's just a lot of opportunities for this team to prove themselves to the world, to Central Florida, to us, to themselves. And so we'll see if they're able to take advantage of the opportunity. If things go well and the NBA Cup goes the Magic's way, they could end up playing 4 straight games on national TV. That's right. They would. Yeah, it would be TNT Tuesday, that Saturday with the 2 semifinals. One is on TNT. I think the other's on ABC, and then the finals on ABC as well. And then they turn around right away and play the Oklahoma City Thunder as their next regular season game. So that would be interesting. 5 nationally televised games in a little bit over 2 weeks would be pretty crazy for the Magic. That would be crazy. But other guys are going to have to step up. We need more from Jalens Suggs. We need more from KCP and Anthony Black and Wendell, all of those guys if we're going to start to put some wins together. Yeah, it's going to be a tough December. January, definitely a lot of winnable games in January, but you've also got some
tough games in that stretch as well. And yeah, you've done a good job winning some games here without Paolo, and now you're kind of biding your time until he comes back. And it'd be great to see this team like really go up another level, because that's when we start having the conversations of like how deep can this team take this, come postseason. But Kevin, I think that is going to wrap this one up. So let's go ahead and do that. For Kevin Tucker, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You all have been listening to the Sixth Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!